Hi, and welcome to our fourth Innovation-Based Instruction workshop. I'm going to try to keep the introduction short today so that we have more time to work on the various activities. I also want to remind you that we have a variety of free resources available on the Curiosity Space website under New York Educator Resources. For those of you who haven't met me or listened to one of my recorded webinars, my name is Kath Jeremita. I want to be upfront and share that I'm not a classroom teacher. My background is in STEM, and I've been a practicing engineer for over 25 years. That said, I've spent much of my career working within the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. And throughout that time, I've had the privilege of collaborating with teachers and students, both formally and informally, in many different ways. From the very beginning, Curiosity Space content has been developed with teachers and students, not just for them. Their feedback has guided us in shaping how we bring the concepts of innovation, entrepreneurship, and STEM into the elementary classroom in both meaningful and practical ways. As we begin, I think it is important to take a quick moment to explain why we believe that innovation is such a powerful tool, especially at the elementary level. I realize this might be a bit repetitive for those who have attended previous workshops, but it is so fundamental to how we think about innovation-based instruction, I think it is worth repeating. So why is innovation so powerful? We've been doing this for over a decade, visiting hundreds of classrooms and working with thousands of students. And here's what we've learned. Student ideas are at the core of who they are. Their ideas reflect the people they're becoming and the things that matter most to them. Innovation and entrepreneurship have a unique way of democratizing and personalizing the learning experience. They naturally center and validate each individual's ideas and interests. And when the ideas and interests being centered belong to students, it sends a powerful message. Your ideas matter, your interests matter, you matter. And it works. When students are given the space and tools to innovate, they often gain a deeper sense of ownership and confidence in their thinking. That confidence, especially in science and STEM, can translate into stronger engagement and higher achievement. Today's objectives are twofold. First, we're going to use some entrepreneur stories to identify connections between science and social studies. Then we're going to work through the outline for a basic 5-lesson innovation challenge lesson plan, only we're going to tailor it to fit your classroom needs. So let's dive into that first objective, using entrepreneur stories to make connections between science and social studies. I know many elementary teachers are often forced to choose between science and social studies, while math and ELA get dedicated and protected time. So the more you have instructional content that can be used to address learning objectives in both subjects, the less you have to choose between teaching one subject versus the other. The table on this slide outlines some select themes and standards for elementary science and social studies. As we read through the following entrepreneur vignette, I'd like you to think about which standards and themes for your grade levels this story might connect with. Let's meet Laura Stachel, the co-founder of We Care Solar. About Laura. Laura studied medicine and lives in California. In 2008, she went to northern Nigeria to try to figure out ways to make having a baby safer for moms and babies. When she was there, she saw that most hospitals didn't have a reliable and constant source of electricity. While this made things hard during the day, it made having a baby at night very dangerous. Sometimes babies were born in total darkness. Other times, mothers and babies had to wait hours for important surgery. Foundational science. Solar electric, also known as solar photovoltaic, is the action of turning sunlight into electrical energy. This is done with solar cells that are made of materials called semiconductors that have special properties. Semiconductors are a mix between a conductor, like a metal, and an insulator, like rubber. When sunlight hits a semiconductor, some of the electrons get pushed out, like too many people sitting on a bench, and they flow through the wires, making electricity. Game-changing idea. When she got home from Nigeria, Laura joined forces with Hal Arntzen, and together they started We Care Solar to help provide hospitals with reliable electricity. Hal created a suitcase-sized solar electric system, which included solar panels, batteries, LED lights, and headlamps for Laura to show to the hospital workers. When Laura returned to Nigeria with the solar suitcase, her Nigerian colleagues were very excited that everything they needed to bring light and electricity to their clinics was contained in an easy-to-use suitcase. They began using the kit to charge headlamps and walkie-talkies immediately. To date, We Care Solar and their partners have distributed almost 3,000 solar suitcases around the world. At this time, I'd like you to take some time to jot down some of the connections you identified. Feel free to scroll back through the video and listen to the story again. Some connections identified by past participants include mapping and using maps, world communities, asking questions and designing solutions to those questions, the human impact on Earth processes and the Earth's processes impact on humans, and using science for good in the world. Now on to innovation challenges and the engineering design process. Let's start with a quick refresher on the basic format of the engineering design process. The engineering design process has 5 basic steps. In the first step, we start with a question, a problem, or a goal. Next, we think about all the possibilities or ways we could address that goal, otherwise known as brainstorming. In this step, it is important to create space for the people involved to explore all the ideas, and not to worry about whether any given idea is a good idea or a bad idea. In step 3, you look at your list of ideas and pick the ones you want to use in the first version of your solution or your design. In step 4, it's time to start creating your solution. This first draft could be just a drawing or a simple prototype. It just needs to be something you can use to see how your solution would come together. It is also something you will use to start gathering feedback and revising. In the 5th step, you will start getting feedback. Feedback can come from outside your group and within your group, even if your quote-unquote group is just a group of 1. From here, we begin a modified version of the cycle again, where we take the feedback as a refined version of the problem statement. Then we generate and select ideas to address the feedback. Now it's time to make modifications to your design and solicit another round of feedback. And so the cycle continues. Honestly, when you break it down, at its core, the engineering design process is no different than the process you would follow to write an essay, or even to work on a piece of art. For the remainder of this session, we're going to put together a lesson series outline for what it might look like to run an innovation challenge in your classroom. An innovation challenge is just the application of the engineering design process into a structured group activity that formally pulls in skill development from other subject areas. If you're new to innovation in your classroom, make sure to take a class or two to do an introduction to the topic. An innovation prompt or an entrepreneur vignette is a great option. From that point, there are 5 basic steps to any innovation challenge, with each step needing 1 or 2 lesson periods. One thing I want to highlight is this misconception alert. You don't need a fancy makerspace or a makerspace at all to run an innovation challenge. Students can use labeled drawings to illustrate and improve their inventions. Step 1 is setting the challenge question. If you're going to include the students in setting the challenge question, then you'll need to give them a bit of a warm-up on identifying a need. Pick a couple of the idea prompts from the list above and have the students think about things they would change. As you're watching this video, pick 1 or 2 to think through on your own. Now I would ask you to pause this video and take a minute or 2 to outline how you would want to set your innovation challenge question. As you can see, the challenge question doesn't always need to be in question format. Some things that you will want to decide before you begin are A, how specific you want the question to be, and B, if you want to have your class contribute to generating the question. The second step of the innovation challenge is brainstorming. The goal of brainstorming is to generate ideas, as many ideas as possible. It is not to evaluate if any idea is good or bad. Now take a few minutes to think about how you would run a brainstorming session in your classroom. Would you bring in extra help to have someone work with each group? Do your students need to take turns sharing ideas so that the shy ones talk? I've often found it useful to have a couple of these rules for brainstorming lists printed and around for groups or supporting adults to help facilitate the process. Now pause this video, please, and take a few minutes to think about how you would run a brainstorming session or 2 in your classroom. What specific things about classroom management are you going to need to consider? Now it's on to step 3, idea selection. This is where students will decide what ideas from their brainstorming list they will want to use in their product or service or innovation. This step can be very hard for students. It's sometimes hard to pick which ideas you want to use and make concessions as a group. So think about how your students might need support to select their ideas. Voting is a good way. Having students pick their top 2 is a good way. Encouraging students to combine ideas is often helpful. Please take a couple minutes and pause this video and think about how you would run an idea selection lesson or session in your classroom. During step 4, it's time to start designing your solutions. Students and groups should start out by drawing out their product. They should be very specific and put lots of notes on the picture that describe things like what the different parts will be made of and how they will be used. It's good to remind students that it's okay to add or remove parts. Also, sometimes at this stage, it's good to start out with 2 products or 2 ideas, a main one and a backup, so that as you're going along, if you find out something's not going to work the way you wanted to, you're ready to switch to something else. As you take time to plan out how you would run the design sessions in your classroom, think about how many sessions you would want to have before facilitating the first feedback session, which is step 5, with your students. You can pause this video and take some time to outline how you would run the design portion of the challenge. Step 5 is to gather feedback and make improvements. During this time, students will both give and receive feedback within their own group, but also between different groups. I always like to remind students and adults when giving feedback, you should say something you like, then suggest a change or improvement, and always be respectful. After a round of feedback, it's time for students and groups to make improvements to their own designs. As a refresher, here's a list of helpful phrases for giving feedback that we discussed during the first session of our innovation-based instruction workshops. Please pause this video and take a few minutes to think how you would want to support your students in giving and receiving feedback. The last element, which is optional, is to have your students formally present their innovations. Some things to consider are, will they just talk or do they need to make a presentation? If you want them to do a presentation, do you want to give them a template? The next two slides are a simple template that we've used in the past to help students in classrooms make simple and short but effective presentations. This brings us to the end of today's session. As usual, I would encourage everyone to do a 3-2-1 reflection. What are 3 things you learned or rediscovered today during this session? What are 2 things you're still thinking about? And what's one thing that you will commit to trying in your classroom? That brings us to the end of our session. I hope you found the ideas and strategies useful. If you have any questions about today's content or about innovation-based instruction in general, please feel free to reach out. Until next time, happy inventing.